Okay. Well, welcome to this short professional development video to give you some ideas of how you can use Qualtrics for different purposes within your assessment process. You're going to be hearing from Chris Urban, the Assistant Director of Data Analytics, and Fred Burak, the Director of Assessment. I want to first review the process of assessment so we're all on the same page and we can see how Qualtrics fits in. We all know that each program has a student learning outcomes which are pulled from the course level from a variety of assessments, quite often through Canvas. But sometimes some of the assessments are more easily collected of the achievement through a different mechanism, through the Qualtrics survey mechanism, and Qualtrics could be put into the form of a rubric or many different forms beyond the simple survey. So in other words, the data from multiple data sources, Canvas and Qualtrics, can go to the faculty to understand the achievement that the students are demonstrating, and again go back to the program for program collection of student achievement data.
And there are multiple reasons to use Qualtrics in contrast to Canvas or some other system to collect assessment data. Some of them we've seen that programs have used in the past are to get data from raters that are outside of the institution. So Canvas requires a login with a K-State username and password. Qualtrics, you can send and get results from people who are not part of the institution. So this would be something like an internship supervisor or some other kind of outside rater, maybe an outside assessor, an expert in the field who you brought in to give a sort of a second opinion or a corroborating opinion on student work. This has been used in our arts areas to bring in those people who are professionals in the field to rate the students alongside the faculty and give them feedback. So Qualtrics can be used for that. Another one is experiences other than coursework. So things that are outside of a normal course, maybe even a defense of a master's project or PhD defense. So instead of collecting that via paper form, that can be sent via a survey using Qualtrics, and the ratings of the student by learning outcome can be collected automatically, and that data gets put together automatically, and it saves a lot of time in terms of data collection, and then also you don't have to do any data entry, and you can get your analysis very, very quickly and easily. Another one is to get some get files and get summary data. So files could be an actual report on what's going on. It could be student data. It could also be artifacts related to assessment. So you know some examples of student work that go along with the actual direct assessment data that's being collected. And then finally, this is more typical of what a survey system will do, and what surveys do is get indirect assessments. So what do students think about their learning? What's their opinion of how much they've learned, rather than those direct assessments, which have the rater, the experts, the faculty member or supervisor or whatnot rate how well students are demonstrating their skills or knowledge or dispositions in certain outcome areas.
And the reason we bring this up is because we, as assessment coordinators and programs, want to understand student learning through a variety of means, so we can more fully understand the learning experience and the quality of learning that is happening in the most authentic way possible.
So the key feature of Qualtrics, or concept in Qualtrics, that kind of is the foundation for making it work well in assessment and in a variety of different areas, is the idea of embedded data. And what embedded data is some information you can attach to a respondent without them having to know that it's being attached. So it's information you already know. So if you imagine a survey, like the first question or maybe in the last question could look something like this, asking someone to enter some information about themselves. And there are some problems with collecting data this way. So if you're asking for name, what do you actually mean? If you're asking for email, which email is it? If you're asking for ID, what ID are you asking for? And on top of the what are you asking for, which maybe you could address by being more specific in the question, there's opportunities for typos, there's opportunities for misinterpretation, even if you are more specific, etc. So what this makes you do, well, one, it makes students answer more, or whoever answer more questions. It also makes it so you have to go in and clean up data after the survey is finished. So it's just more work on everybody's part to get data that's actually usable. So instead of doing this, what you can do is use embedded data for all the information you already know about a student, and you can attach that to their response without anybody having to do anything. So you already know their name, their email, their ID, their major, etc. You can have Qualtrics automatically connect their response to all that other information, and then you can report based off of that. So it makes everything a lot simpler. And it does so in these ways. And I already mentioned shortened surveys. So getting a full completed survey where they're answering authentically and answering the question by actually thinking through them is key to getting good, reliable, and valid data. So the more you can shorten it, the better, because they get survey fatigue, taking longer surveys, and might just rush through at the end. You can standardize that data that connects to connects to other information you might want to know about respondents. So you don't have to clean that up because it's standardized and it's in a form that you have pulled or put together in some other way, so you know it's good data. You don't have to go back and re-clean it. This also allows for the identification of individuals by ID number. Let's say you have an ID number that connects to some other system. You can use that to leverage all the other data and you can go back in the future and reanalyze data or reconnect data to answer new questions that may come up later on. You can personalize the survey questions using embedded data. So if you already know the student's major, instead of asking a question saying, tell us about your major, you can ask the question, tell us about the economics major. Tell us about your time in English. Tell us about your time in music education, etc. And that helps create an association between the respondent and the actual survey, so they're more engaged and more likely to rate things a little bit more accurately and completely than they would otherwise. And then finally, you can also personalize the actual communications or emails you're sending out to get responses. So you can say, instead of a general message, hey, help us by taking the survey, you can say, help us by taking the survey about your major, or about this teacher, or this TA, or this student, or this whoever is being rated. You can put that in the actual email message and in the email subject, so that people are, again, more likely to respond to a more specific targeted message that respects the information you already know about them versus a more general message that is sent to everybody. And then using those, if you do this to identify responses with an ID number, that allows you, again, to do that more advanced analysis. So what we can do in our office is take those responses and connect them to other sources of data. There are a couple examples there of data from our student information system, so other demographic information or success information like GPA or grades in specific classes, or time to degree or graduation or retention. You can also connect it to other data sources, so assessment data that comes from Canvas or comes from other surveys, or is showing card swipes or participation data in events. This can all be combined together and then sent back to the program to provide a much more in-depth analysis of the data that's being collected. So rather than just having the survey be one thing that's sort of siloed, it can be connected and integrated with other data, and to create a more well-rounded view of what's going on in the program in terms of student assessment, student success, etc. Okay, so now what we're going to do is look at a few examples of different setups and how we can use embedded data within those setups to collect assessment data. So the first one we're going to look at is actually indirect assessment, and that's just a general survey asking students, what they think about their learning. This is the most typical thing that would be used, and then we'll go into some more advanced things to collect direct assessment data. So I'll actually get out of PowerPoint here and go into Qualtrics, and we're looking at this example here for indirect assessments. And see, this survey has an introduction here, and it has a question that asks about their progress made in student learning outcomes. So the first step is to create your survey and put in your questions. Then the next step in this is to actually create your contact list, or your list of respondents that you're going to send this to. So that's under contacts here, and go into this contacts. And I already have uploaded it here, but what you'll do is you'll actually create this in Excel, and it'll look a little bit like this. And you'll see here I have the students or respondents' first name and last name, and these are required fields or typical fields that Qualtrics uses to know who to send it to and what their first name and last name is. And then these fields to the right are all the embedded data fields. So these are fields that I can add as many as I want to assign and use as embedded data fields in the survey for those students. So instead of just getting that, I know this student took the survey, I know that they took it about this course and this number and this semester and this outcome. So those are all the embedded data fields that can be used in the survey. So for this example, what I actually have here is some that I've already uploaded. If I click on one of these, I can look and see what's in here. So we have the major code, the ID number, the username, college, major, semester, and year. So those are all attached already to my respondents. So once I have the contact list created and then uploaded, and if I go back to the survey itself, what I can do is what I need to do is link the embedded data from the contact list with the survey so that I can use it in the survey. And to do that, you actually have to go to the survey flow, and I'll delete the one that's already there, and I'll add it. So I'll add a new element to the survey flow, and you'll see I have a block for my introduction, block for the questions that I have in my survey. And now I want to add a new item that's embedded data. And I could type in all those fields here one by one. They have to be exactly the same as what's in my contact list. But it's a lot easier to just click Add from Contacts and then select that contact list. And then you'll see all of the embedded data fields show up there. Click OK, and now they'll be set in my survey. Then what I'll do is I'll move this to the top of my survey so that those get set immediately when someone opens the survey. If you have it at the end, it's only once they complete do those actually get set. So then I'll click Save Flow. And now those fields are connected, so whenever somebody takes the survey, those fields will also be collected and associated with the response. But I can also use those in the survey itself. So let's say I have, instead of this here, let's say I have something that says, congratulations on completing your degree. That's that generic message. But if I want to customize this, I could say, congratulations on completing your degree in, and then I can use this pipe text feature here by clicking pipe text. Then I can go down to embedded data fields and click the drop down and select the major name embedded data field that I set just a second ago. Click insert, and now it'll insert this line of code, and then for each student or respondent that takes this, their major name that's in the embedded data field in that contact list will automatically be entered in here instead of this code, or instead of that generic message. So that'll personalize this introduction to assign the major name for that respondent. I can also do the same thing. I've already done it down here with the college. So instead of, as a result of your experience in your college, I'll get rid of that generic message. Now it'll type in their college. And so that, again, creates that association and engagement with the survey questions. So what that looks like on the student side comes in when you actually distribute this to respondents or to students. And that I'll do in the distributions tab. So if I click on that, Then what you can do is you can send emails, and I'll go ahead and do a new one here and select who I want to send it to. So I'll use my contact list here, say who it's from, when I want to send it. And you'll notice here that I already created an email that says help rate, and I piped in the major name in here. So this will pipe in that and add the word department after it, and then there's a link to the survey. What you can do also is, and it's already done here, but I'll go ahead and do it again, you can copy and paste from this email section down here into the subject line, and it will work. So rate the blank major, and it will type in the actual major name right here, and that will show as the subject line in the email. So that creates that connection and branding for the survey.
The reason that this is important is because your goal is for any type of survey or questionnaire that you would have, you want as many respondents as possible. The students are more likely to answer a survey or a set of questions that are specific to something that is of value to them. Secondly, many times generic questions get confusing to the students. What are you talking about? Maybe they have two majors, or maybe they have a major and a minor, and now what are we talking about in that question? So if you can have the question become very specific for the student, then not only that it's more likely they'll answer the survey, but they will be able to answer it with the context.
Yeah, so once you have this set up, you can click to send. I'm just going to cancel it because I already sent it. And then that will show up in an email that looks something like this. So I have this was piped in, this is my major, the economics department, and rate the economics major up above in the subject line. So that's what it will look like. Now when I go to take the survey, the same things will be, will be piped in those questions. So that helps create that more targeted appeal and association to students. So that's really the example from start to finish of how to use embedded data to set it in a contact list and put it into the survey flow, use it in pipe text in questions, and then use it as pipe text in distribution email. So now what we'll do is we'll take a look at a few other examples of surveys. So we'll go to the next slide here. And how this can be used to facilitate collection of direct assessment data in different ways. So one of them, the really, really basic one, is just to list all the students who could be assessed in a single survey question and have those be rated for a particular outcome. So that will look like this. If I can get to it here, this example here. And here I have an introduction. I asked the faculty to say what assignment, and you could add all sorts of things here to collect the assignment, the course, et cetera, if you don't know that, what's being used to assess these students. And then down below, you have just a question that's just asking, what level did each student achieve on the aligned assignment for? And here I'm piping in the actual outcome itself. So I'm telling my faculty, hey, you're responsible for this outcome. I'm just going to put that here to remind you this is what you're assessing, rather than just have that, again, generic, I'll assess this for your outcome or something like that. And then in the list of students, you can actually copy and paste over here in this list. And so you can copy and paste all the names or email addresses or what have you to make it a little bit easier. And then here we have a generic scale that's really kind of a rubric in a sense that's asking, did they exceed, meet, or not meet expectations? So that's a very, very basic example of collecting direct data. The next one is a little bit more advanced, is that you can actually create a single survey that can be retaken multiple times to assess different outcomes or different students. So I'll go back to that example. And that's right here. And so this one collects the same things at the top, and then what it does here is asks a question. It says, what outcome will you be assessing? So it's asking you, a faculty or a rater, to choose the outcome. And so they can choose that there. And then what this survey does is it takes whatever this choice was up here and pipes it in down below. So piped text can be used for embedded data. That's the data you associate with a respondent and a contact list, but it can also be used to get information from earlier on in the survey. So if I go to pipe text and go to survey question, you can actually say, go to that question and say, choose, pipe in the selected choices that were selected in that particular question, and then that will pipe in right here. So that's what that code will look like there. So that'll automatically pipe that in, and then you can again rate the students. One of the key things about this particular setup is you have to change a survey option. It's right in here in survey options for any survey. There's an option that says prevent ballot box stuffing, and it says keep people from taking the survey more than once. So that by default is checked. So you want to uncheck that box if you want to allow people to come back into the survey multiple times to rate different outcomes. This could be a list of outcomes. This could be a list of students. You can use this in a variety of ways to have people take the survey more than once to assess multiple different things. All right, the next example is called loop and merge, and this is a feature in Qualtrics that allows, instead of you take a whole survey more than once, you actually take just a section of the survey multiple times. So you loop through it, and then those results get merged together, hence the name, after the survey is completed. So if I go into this example, you can see what that looks like. Again, I asked some things up at the top, but in this one, so you can see I'm piping in the outcome name here, then asking the rater to select which students do you want to rate. They can select student 1, 2, 4, 5, whatever, whoever they're observing or whoever they are supervising or what have you. And then down here, I'll actually go ahead and turn it off for now, and we'll start from the beginning. It's in the block options. So block is just a set of questions, and if you go into the block options for a given block, you can click loop and merge, and then turn it on, and then it will loop based off of a question, and that will be select the students. So whichever students are selected in that previous question, that's what it'll loop through and have the person rate. And then we'll do all selected choices down here and click save. So that will now loop through, with this loop and merge, all the selected choices. Pipe text also works with loop and merge. So if I go to pipe text, I can go down to loop and merge fields and say, which student was selected, so I can display their name. I can also say how many, what the current loop is and how many total you have to get through to give them kind of a status indicator. So that's what's going on here. And then they can rate all the different areas across all the different outcomes that are selected. So if I preview this survey, let's see what that actually looks like in practice. So this is assignment name test 1, and then I'll choose to rate student 2 and 4 and 5 and go next. And now you can see this is student 1 of 3 loops, and then this is student 2 that I'm rating now, and I can rate the student, click next, and then it will ask me to rate student 4, rate that student, and then I'll rate student 5. So this is useful in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different situations where you don't know who exactly is being assessed by whom, but you have the overall who could possibly be assessed, so you can use loop and merge in that way.
And of course, since this is just a generic example where it says student 1 and student 5, most likely it's going to say the student's name, so that you know and the person completing this evaluation knows exactly who they are rating or who they're scoring at that particular time.
Okay, so just a couple of other examples here. One is a single survey with multiple links sent to each evaluator. So instead of having one survey link where you select or you retake the survey over and over again, or select the students you want to rate and loop through them, what this will do is actually send multiple emails directly to the email inbox of the respondents, so that then they can rate multiple people. So we use this for our GTA communication survey. Students will rate GTAs on their communication skills, and some students will have will be in courses with multiple GTAs. So we'll send them an email saying, okay, rate this GTA, and then there'll be another email saying rate this other GTA, so that they can, when they are actually in a position to rate them, they can click on that email and go and rate that one, and then they can be done with that one, and then when they're in a position to rate the next one, they can click on the other email and rate the next one. So this is also useful for, a program uses this for PhD supervisors of master's students in their therapy center. So they send emails to the PhD supervisors for their 5 supervisees, and then as they go through the meeting or the review process with their master's supervisee, they actually fill out the form for that student in particular, and then they're done with that one, and then later on they can come back to it and rate the next one. So there are a lot of different ways that this one can work as well. This one has a little bit different setup in the contact list. So what this one looks like is like this. So you'll see that people are listed, respondents are listed multiple times. So they'll get multiple emails. It can all be the same course. I'm using the metadata here, but you'll see over here, I set the supervisee as embedded data. So you know who you're rating. You can pipe that in to the email and to the questions. And then each one of these will generate a link and an email to this person. So what that looks like in the actual survey isn't really any different from any of the other ones, in that it really is a pretty basic setup because they're getting multiple links. They'll be able to come back into the survey multiple times for each student. This one is a little bit different, though, in that the question that's used down here is a little bit of different setup. So instead of using that generic, met expectations, exceeded expectations, which is one line here, that's just sort of a matrix question. The way I set this one up was actually using a profile question under matrix. So it's a profile single answer. And what that looks like, instead of the radio buttons or whatnot, when I preview it, that will instead look like this, which looks a little bit more like a rubric, which can be really, really helpful in defining those individual criteria achievement levels, so that when faculty or raters are scoring this, they can have a little bit more guidance, and it can potentially improve reliability of the data.
The usefulness of this format comes, as Chris was mentioning, in examples where the rater, as mentioned, it has to rate multiple people, but they're not going to rate them at the same time. For example, in the final examinations of master's or PhD students, their final evaluation meeting happens at different times. So they really need a different link. They can't rate all their students at one particular survey link. It also is extremely effective when you have external evaluators in internships or field experiences, that over a period of time, they are supposed to rate or score the students in particular skills or competencies. And most of the programs use this structure to be able to collect that form of achievement data from these external evaluators.
Yeah. I do also want to mention here that, to sort of reiterate, that a lot of these different strategies can be used together. So you could use loop and merge in addition to this particular setup for multiple links to say which outcomes are you assessing, and they could select the outcomes, but still have multiple links and multiple emails for different students, taken at different times. So it really depends on the situation that your program is in, and what the timeline is for assessment, how things are typically assessed, and what data you're actually wanting to collect. And we in the Office of Assessment can assist you in kind of designing this in the way we can help you build it. And then you can run your surveys, and we can help you with the analysis part as well. So please contact us to kind of figure out how best to set this up for your program. Let's see there. Another example here is you can use Qualtrics to get some summarized data and or file submissions. And file submissions could be things like artifacts or assignment descriptions or rubrics or examples of student work that fall into each category. Again, that can help with reliability, or it can help with other reporting requirements where you need those artifacts and those examples. So what that looks like is this one right here. And we actually use this on an annual basis to collect our assessment reports and summarize data for our student learning outcomes institutionally. But what you actually do is here, this is an example here, but of a file upload question type. And once you add that, that'll just add that choose file to upload a file. So you can add as many of those as you want, and you can add a specific question. Again, you can use this with type text and with embedded data to get those, get that student work or get the rubric or assignment description or what have you. And then down below here, there's some other questions. Scroll down here. There we go. Where we're asking about, report the number of students who met or exceeded expectations for the outcomes listed. So that's just getting that summarized data rather than the student by student data. Note though that when you get summarized data, you're not able to necessarily connect that to other information about the student. So as you aggregate up, you get less power in terms of analysis for your data. So it's best if you can to collect that student by student. All right, one other example is to require sign-in to a survey, and this is called, or uses a thing called an authenticator in Qualtrics. And what this does is allows you to collect information that's identified from people who you don't know are taking the survey. You don't know who's taking the survey. So you don't have a list of students or faculty or raters who are taking the survey. Instead, you ask them to sign in, and then you can get that identified information, whether that's their email, their first name, or their last name. So what that looks like in Qualtrics is this survey over here. And I have, just a general evaluation there. But the way you set this up is actually in the survey flow, just like embedded data. But instead of doing embedded data, what you'll add is an authenticator element. And I already have one up here that's set up, so I'll just use that one. And for K-State, this will depend on your institution, but for K-State, you can authenticate with single sign-on is what that is. And then you can get their identifying information with their email, their first name and last name. What this will do is set those embedded data fields for you with their email, first name, and last name. And the email can be used as an identifier to connect to other pieces of data about that student. And then our SSO type is shibboleth. And so that will collect this information and automatically assign it to identify students or respondents who you don't already know about. And then all you have to do is stick your block of questions underneath the authenticator by moving them. You can move it out or back in and put it under the authenticator. And then those questions will only be accessed once they sign in, and this data will be collected for those questions. So it's a way in another situation to get around the anonymity of a survey and identify students where you don't know in advance who they are.
As mentioned before, the only way you can then tie the student information you're gaining to the, say, student information system to be able to disaggregate and analyze with more detail is to have it on by the student by student basis. Quite often there are some programs that have a particular single survey, but you don't know exactly who's going to take it when. If you don't have that pre-designed list with the connector, say with the student number, so you can make that connection to the student information system, then this can get it for you.
Yep, and one example of this would be something like a tutoring center that has walk-in tutoring or something like that. And if students were to walk in, and then afterwards you say, hey, can you please tell us how we did and how we can do better? But you want to also break that down eventually by how well you're serving, let's say, first-generation students. This would be really the only way to do that, by having them take that survey immediately after they're done with the session. They don't have to enter their information again, because that can cause all those problems of the wrong information entered or typos or whatnot. So all they have to do is sign in, take the quick survey, and then you have the information you need, and they've gotten out of there faster than they would have otherwise. So that is the authenticator. Okay, so those are some ways to set up surveys to collect information. There are also ways to get different ways to get information out of surveys. So one of those is email notifications via triggers, is what they're called in Qualtrics. So triggers are available in any survey under the Tools menu. Go to Triggers and Email Triggers. And what triggers do is say send an email when the survey is complete, and you can set this to send to a specific email address, but you can also pipe in embedded data and copy and paste this again up above, and this will pipe in the email of the supervisor, the supervisee, the student, the faculty evaluator, whoever's email you have and are piping in here. You can have it send an email saying, hey, this evaluation is complete. You can also, down here, include a response report to say, hey, here's the results of your evaluation. So we work with a program who uses this to have their faculty supervisors rate their their master students on their work in a practicum, and they go through the survey together in a meeting, and then once it's done, it automatically sends a report of the results to the faculty member who does the rating, to the student, and to the main office email, so that they know it's done as well. That way, everybody's in the loop, everybody knows what's been done, and there's no paper moving in between the office and the faculty and the student, and there's no copies being made, et cetera, which is how it worked in the past. So it saves a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of effort, and it puts the information together in one sort of repository in the survey in Qualtrics, so that it can then be analyzed in aggregate as well later on.
This replicates what Canvas is doing in a course when you're filling out a survey. You want to take the word survey out and putting an evaluation or assessment of student achievement. And then when you push submit, the students see their scores and they see the comments that you have, as well as it goes to the program that's collecting the information. So this allows Qualtrics to be able to replicate that same process.
So those are email triggers. That's a way to get sort of those reports of the entire response that was entered in. There's also ways to just get more of an aggregate summary data. One of those is through the Qualtrics reporting tool, and then you can also download the raw data for further reporting. So in Qualtrics, under the Reports tab for any survey, that's where it will give you the summary reports here, and you can go into reports as well and actually build a more customized version. They're all shareable, meaning you can export them to Word or PDF, and that'll give you the aggregate data as well as all the comments and the embedded data that goes along with them if you want. So that's all there to get sort of a quick glance view of what the survey results are, or to generate a pretty quick report if it's not really needed to be analyzed further. If you just want the results in a pretty basic format, you can do that there. To go further with the analysis, it's actually under the Data and Analysis tab, and this will show all of your responses down below, and then you can export those into a CSV file, which will let you then connect to other sources of data, or merge different surveys together into one data source, and then report data in more ways that are much more explorable and analyzable, so that you can go deeper and ask questions and analyze your data more than you ever could before. So what this actually looks like in a service that we provide for programs is, it looks like this in Power BI. And so what we do is we take data from various sources. It could be our student information system, it could be Canvas, it could be Qualtrics, and we put that together all in Power BI. And so for survey results, what that looks like is something like this. If I choose a question, it'll take a second to come up, but then it shows this one in particular. It shows how much progress have you made in your ability to interact positively with people who are different from you, and you can see the results over time. You can see breakdowns by particular demographic categories and the source and how many responded, etc. And then this can be broken down even further by college, and there are all kinds of different options for breaking this down by really any piece of data we have in our student information system. So you can see by different demographic categories, by first generation status, let's say, by whether they're your major or not your major, etc. So there are all kinds of different options for reporting data that comes from surveys. And this can be direct or indirect, as it is here. The direct example looks a little more like this. This is data that could come, again, from really any source, but it could be knit together, sourced from Qualtrics or from Canvas or from Excel sheets or from other systems, and puts those together, again, with the student information system to show the results by outcome category. So critical thinking, whether they met or did not meet expectations. And I can drill down as well to see the individual criteria that were assessed in each of those outcomes. See how many are proficient to sort of guide me in what improvements to make or what areas need improvement. And then there are these demographic categories, which are all interactive. So I could say, just show me the results for transfer students or non-transfer students. So again, see if you're serving the populations you're really trying to serve as well as you think you should. And that can also guide potential improvements and decisions on changes to make. This can also be displayed in other ways by tables instead of by charts, so it can be displayed in whatever way is needed for other reporting, so you never really have to make those reports again. So just like with Canvas, Qualtrics can go really from, administer an assessment, send a survey out, what have you, directly to the analysis in a dashboard form. So it gets rid of all of the paper transmission, it gets rid of the data entry, and it gets rid of all the errors that can happen along the way with that, and provides much more power to programs to analyze the data they do collect.
The Office of Assessment has several services that we want to offer to you. One of them is if you need to know how to use Qualtrics and want to design your assessment mechanism in a little bit more, higher quality and more usefulness, call us. We will help you design it and show you how to make that work. If you need us to be able to help you create a system that automatically puts these together into visualization format as the ways that you've seen, we will help you do that. If you want us to help you to tie multiple sources of data together to be able to analyze it more effectively, we will help you do that as well. And in general, anything dealing with any type of assessment mechanism that is going to help your program be more successful in their assessment processes, give us a call or an email, and we will work with you and help design the process that's going to be most effective.